Good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining in. So, in the previous session, we were when I was handling, I was talking about the loads and other things. And subsequently, when Professor Sendil Kumar and Professor Shashanka Bhushan were discussing, they discussed about the same concept but with examples of monkeys. Yesterday, we had a very brief introduction of what these APIs are. API stands for Application Programming Interface. Okay, API stands for Application Programming Interface. So whenever we have a software, it is also known as an application, and we are having a interface. Okay, we are having an interface, a method by which we can connect up with the program. Okay, so application programming interface. So you will find that there are many application programming interface. I am having this application OneNote, which is basically a Microsoft Office tool. Suppose I want to draw a straight line. Instead of opening and then me drawing, suppose I can just say that this point is 0, 0, and let's say till 10, 0, I want a line drawn. So if this line gets drawn because you are not directly interacting with the application, then you say it is an API. You will also find that there are many other things which you do with the API in many other software. So for example, in Excel, suppose I want to keep in the cell A1 a value. Let me use the word. Let me say I want to store the word VIT. If I do, if I'm able to create a workbook without opening the GUI, and I'm able to put a value into that cell and store the file and close it, then I'm using an API. In the only flaw may be that I'm saying that without opening the application, without opening the file and so many things, which is slightly flawed in the truest sense. However, for our understanding, for the first level understanding, we are going to control a program from another program or by using a another tool. If you see, the code which you write is a program. You are writing a Python script which acts as another program to access Midas Civil in our case. You will be able to do this to a lot of other programs also. Now, whenever you look at the API, this is how it usually works. So there will be a computer which can take these remote commands. So typically we call them as servers. Okay, so this server is listening for instructions. It is listening for instructions. In your case, or in our case, we are writing a small program. Let us call this as myscript.py. Okay, so this Python script is going to interact with the server. So it uses the requests module, which is essentially going to send a request through the internet to the server. So it sends a command to the server, and then the server is going to give back some information. It has a few components. It tells which it goes to the API key and also a command. So when the server looks at the API key, it will immediately know to which of the endpoints the information has to go. And once the work is done, this computer, this Midas will respond back to the server saying, I have done the work or I have not done the work. And this is the message which is taken and passed back to the script which we ran. So yesterday when we were looking at our program, we had a long script. The script had actually many small parts. Those small parts were sent as you sent using the request API, request as an API to the server. What the server does, what the software does, nobody knows on the backend. So suppose if you look at this, let us say that this is Midas version 2024. So you will be finding that there are some work which is to be done to get a particular result. Okay. Now, when you are going to say, let us say that after some time, you're going to remove 2024 version and you're going to install the 2025 version. Maybe there are some additional features. You don't have to change your requests just because this target computer has changed its OS or other things. You just need to still use the same API and it will still work. But there is a caveat here. Sometimes when there is a very big change, more information will have to be required to be passed to achieve the same result, or some of the information need not be passed to the to the endpoint. So in those cases, what will happen? Your API will start to get deprecated. So when it gets deprecated, you will need to be a little careful. When I say careful, you'll have to ensure that you read the manual and then are able to work. But the bottom line is most of the times changes in the software which you're working on will not affect the API. It will not affect the API. So for example, I run many servers on a platform called Hetzner. So if suppose I want to spin up a new server, I just have to take the Hetzner's API. So it can be, they'll be available for many languages. So I prefer PHP. So you will use what is known as a CURL to send the request to the server. The server will, that is the endpoint of the API. So it will know, oh, John wants to create a new server. And these are the things it has to have. For example, Ubuntu 24.04, that is the version which is required. The name of the server is Midas Challenge, for example. So it will create all those things and then it will also keep giving me feedback. So it will say, oh yeah, the server has been created. The size of the hard drive which you asked as extended or which you wanted to have, that has been done. So like that, all the steps will be done. Okay, so basically this is what endpoints APIs do. So you communicate with the endpoint. Endpoint will communicate, will do the work. In this case, it is telling Midas, create a beam with so many different nodes, and then give the answer back whether you've done it or not. Okay, so if you remember yesterday's webinar, we found that there were requests with 200 and 201. These are all success responses. Anything above 400 means that there is a failure. So there can be a failure for so many reasons. One of the reasons was this endpoint was not listening. We had disconnected it from the server. So when it was disconnected, it was not doing any work. Okay. So this is about the APIs. I'm not going to go too much into the API right now, into Midas's API right now. I want all of you to be able to understand what an API is. An API is simply a set of exposed functions to help any other programming language to interact with another application. So please remember that there are very specific syntax which you need to use to ensure that your program can effectively communicate with the endpoint. Okay, so the server which is over here is the endpoint. Subsequently, this is a client of the server, and the server will do the work on the client. APIs will usually be consistent for a extended period of time. So you don't have to worry about whether the API will change very quickly and all that. It will take a long time. Okay, let me give you an example. You can write LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts, and all that without having to go to the Facebook. what do? You will have your own application. It will have a mechanism to connect to Facebook server, and when you follow certain rules, you'll find that the Facebook post is live. So those of you who are having a WordPress website, you would have noticed that you want to have a tweet, or if you want to put a Facebook message that your, I don't know what they call it on X now. Yeah. So you want a message to go that, you've done something amazing. You don't have to go to all the different platforms. It still happens. Okay. So this is another example of API, which I hope that few of you might have experienced. Okay. So let's get to the Q&A part. First and foremost, you're right. API is a medium to connect a programming language to the endpoint of the server. You're absolutely right. And if you're sharing with me as a point, the point is well taken. And thank you so much.